John, welcome to the show. Great to have you here.
Excited to be here.
For those who haven't encountered your work yet, perhaps you could share a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so my name is John Sampogna. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Wondersauce. We are a digital agency, advertising agency, whatever you want to call us. I don't even know what to call us anymore. Based in New York City. We're about 100 people. We specialize in campaigns and paid media, along with building digital product, everything from websites and mobile applications to things that don't exist that we concept. So we're built for that modern contemporary customer trying to navigate a very complex internet.
Absolutely. And it has changed a lot. I mean, I'm noticing techniques that worked 10, even 5 years ago are not as reliable. How would you approach a new client engagement, someone who wants to grow their business?
Yeah, I think the tried and true answer to that question is always to start with the audience and who we're going after and what does a competitive set look like, and ultimately how are we going to stand out and ultimately gain people's attention. I think right now the trap that a lot of brands are falling into, they're relying too heavily on paid media to get customers, both in terms of buying stuff and ultimately retaining their attention.
Hey there, if you'd like to support this show and help us continue producing this kind of content, please visit startwithvalues.com. There's a link in the show notes, and pre-order my forthcoming book. It's packed full of tools, insights, techniques to help you live a values-aligned life, to reduce stress, increase fulfillment, and it makes a great gift. So perhaps it's something you could share with someone else who you care about. That would mean the absolute world to me. Thank you again, and all the best. Let's get back to the episode.
And while we believe that spending money on media is super, super critical, there's got to be a balance. And I think that spending time investing in your brand story and ultimately what makes you unique, whether that's your product and it's something truly different for the category that we want to really lean into in terms of the benefits, or if it's really around a lifestyle, something more cultural that we want to almost build a story, a narrative around that we can start to own. And I think that a lot of brands right now are less willing to invest in that top of funnel, that brand storytelling area, because it isn't as cleanly represented in an end of week analytics report where you can tie it back to we put X amount of dollars in, X amount of dollars came out, we're performing above what Meta says is best practice. So things are great. And I think that doing that too often and being completely weighted on that spectrum is a little bit dangerous.
It makes a lot of sense. In my own personal experience, running businesses have found that paid media, and I take full responsibility for this, but very low returns, and you can invest a lot. And people say, just keep experimenting, you'll get there. I mean, at some point you've got to stop experimenting and say, okay, what else can we do? And I've found that things like podcasting are an incredible networking tool that was not even considered part of the potential mix 5-10 years ago. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on some of these new channels, particularly, I mean, of course, we know about influencers and social media, but what are some other channels that people should consider when telling their brand story to the world?
Yeah, podcasts are an amazing vehicle for that. And I think just using this example of what we're doing here, which is largely B2B focused and, coming on and talking about experiences and stories with the hope of broadening, in this case, my and your networks to different people. I think that, there's no immediate ROI on this conversation. There's no one's going to call tomorrow and say, that was great, here's $1 million. Maybe they will, that'd be amazing, but it's probably not going to happen. Every single time that you're producing content, whether that's on, LinkedIn or your own personal blog or any other social channel, those are all things you're doing without any immediate return. Speaking at events, all this stuff.
Yeah.
It's all basically very long lead. And I think that you balance this type of work with paid efforts. So for instance, let's say that I'm doing a number of podcasts over the course of a year, and there's a specific topic that every single time I speak about it, it gets better engagement.
Hey there, Brad here, and this is not an ad. This is me saying thank you for connecting with this podcast. I would like to offer you a free gift. If you visit bradleyhook.com/gift, you'll find something very special there just for you. Now back to the episode.
We know there's something there. So if I'm going to go out and spend $10,000 to partake in a corporate event where we're one of the sponsors and someone on my team, whether it's myself or someone else, will get to speak in front of CMOs and marketers in the room, I now have a data point that I know this type of content will hit harder than something else potentially. So I may want to take that investment and do that. And I think that's the same thing with brands in terms of paid versus organic. When you create something organically that is driving earned media, driving free engagement, free attention, now when you put money behind it, it's going to be even more powerful. You'll get it in front of more people, and you already know that that message is working. So we really like to work with our brands on a balanced approach where it's one part paid, one part earned, and there's a nice balance in between because you do need both.
Yeah. Do you think SEO, I mean, this is an area that I used to specialize in, and I've managed to get websites to rank top of Google worldwide many, many times, including my own website, bradleyhook.com, for certain very, very niche phrases, but I've managed to do it for many businesses. However, I've noticed that SEO is way less impactful than before, and I'm wondering if it's because of ChatGPT. People are not using search engines as much as they're using AI. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's actually a really interesting conversation right now. I still think organic search really matters.
Yeah.
And I do think even just the simple practice of making sure your site's digital experiences are optimized for search, the things you're writing in terms of the words you're using, how you're structuring your content, I think that that general practice is still incredibly important. The emerging conversation that we're hearing now is around this language model optimization conversation, where it's around structuring content for these large language models to ultimately ingest. And I've watched a bunch of videos. I've done a lot of thinking on this, and there's really no answer yet, at least from what I can tell and see.
That's right.
The way I'm kind of thinking about it now is if, we're looking at it strictly through the lens of traditional SEO, and we're creating content around, I don't know, how to be engaging on a podcast. And we're writing, all the different, the headlines that we're including, the metadata, all the keywords we want to include. We are, prioritizing the right type of language earlier on in the blog post.
Hey, Brad here. Would you believe that around 70% of the people who watch this podcast have not yet subscribed? It would mean the world to us if you click that subscribe button on whichever platform you use so that we can stay connected with you and you'll receive notifications when we add new episodes. We really appreciate you coming and connecting with us and being part of our community. So all the best.
We're then posting it on our site and everything like that, and we're structuring it correctly. I'm thinking about what does that look like for LMO? And to me, it's a little bit more of a call and response where maybe that same post, if it's 300 or 400 words, it might have 10 headlines, and every headline is structured as a prompt. And then there's an immediate prompt response there where we're almost structuring it as if you would be in a ChatGPT or a Gemini or something like that, and you're writing a prompt. So I don't think that the jury's out on best practice or exactly how to do it, other than people are using these LLMs as search tools, and it's going to only increase. So the fact that it's scraping the internet, there's going to be a whole new reset on how we optimize content for these large language models.
That's a great idea. Structuring the headings as questions, as prompts, and then creating content, and potentially human-like content is going to perform better because it's not just the LLM ingesting its own text. So it has to be kind of unique and add value in some way, as always, right?
Yeah. It's funny too, because now it's the next question is well, what is the role of your website going forward? And do you even need a website? Or are they just basically existing to crawl? And everyone's going to experience the web through these LLM portals.
Yeah.
And the portals will be able to surface information dynamically, whether that's video, mixed media, static content, imagery, whatever. It's interesting. So I think knowing where you're going to fit long term, and if you're going to be in like the content creation and scraping business where you're putting a bunch of like dark pages out there to ultimately rank within LLM and that's your whole thing, that could be a model. Or you can almost take it and say like, we want to be hyper experiential, and we want our owned properties to almost feel like these crazy experiences that people go to only once in a while. But when they go, it's something completely ownable and true to us as a brand and a business.
Makes a lot of sense. This is an interesting conversation because, yeah, eventually maybe websites just end up plain text files that the LLMs scrape. But I think, well, at least for now, most of the LLMs are not real time. So you still need to go to a search engine at some point and do a search and purchase something from a website rather than from an LLM for now. Let's backtrack a little bit because I'd love your thoughts on actually crafting a great brand story. Where would you begin?
The exercise I like to usually start with is understanding if we're starting from scratch and we're creating a campaign or a platform for a brand that's going to be live for 5 years or so. The first question I either ask to myself or to the clients, is this a brand story or a product story? And I think that instinctually people like to default to it's a product story, and our product story is our brand story. And I usually say, okay, but it's not, or talk more about your product. And what I'm trying to look for is your product truly unique, truly differentiated? Is it something that is like new to a category that's going to disrupt what's currently been there? Is it a category creator? Is it something that is basically like one of those things you walk into a dinner party and it's a conversation piece? That's a product story. You know, you look at like very obvious product stories that exist. A lot of what Apple has done historically, whether it's the iPad or the iPhone or the iPod, the product speaks for itself. It's user experience first. And I think that's an interesting angle. So first I want to figure out, is it a product story or is it a brand story? And there's no right or wrong answer here. There's not like one is not better or worse than the other. And if it's truly a product story, then we want to just really lean into the product benefits and tie those product benefits to our target personas and archetypes, and figure out then how to write super crafty and tailored campaign messaging, social content, influencer content to ultimately reach people who are looking for that use case. And then the brand story is when you are trying to stand out through the lens of what you're all about, your brand essence, the feeling, ultimately like the target you're going after. And it's something that you almost need to create and invest in and reinvest in and keep investing in. It's something that you can have an incredibly strong brand, but if you let it decay, you're losing equity in that, and you have to keep investing in that. And, you know, the most obvious example that I've been thinking about lately is one of the biggest names right now, like Liquid Death, where, you know, it's water, and they've completely changed the narrative around it. It's amazing. It's 100% a brand story, which is really cool. So I think that that's always the first exercise I use, at least. It's that, which lane are we jumping into? And then, you know, go from there.
Interesting. For those who are not aware, Liquid Death, it's basically water that comes in a can. What have they done different from your perspective?
It's just the way they're marketing water. It's just remarkable. It's very much, I don't even want to like speak on behalf of the brand because I had nothing to do with it, and they're so good at it. But to me, it's one of those things where people are like, when I see people like in rooms, conference rooms, or out at restaurants, and they're clutching it, it's like a point of pride. They've basically made it almost like the equivalent
Mm.
of an energy drink or an alcoholic beverage or something like that, where it just doesn't feel like water. And it's the over the top graphic use of visuals that they're
Yeah.
using to make the cans really stand out. Even the stunt they pulled for the I believe it was the Super Bowl, where they were basically getting people to engage so they can advertise on their box. It was just a really cool stunt, and it basically like was way more impactful than spending $5 million on a Super Bowl spot. So
Crazy.
I just think they're a really cool brand, and they're doing it completely different.
How important do you think it is that the brand story represents the founder's story? And I'm, you get a lot of founders who have such a strong personality that the brand kind of follows them. Or do you think you start with the customer? Like because I've worked with many founders or CEOs who have a really strong vision and the brand really reflects that vision. Or would you say start with the customers? Like, let's really think about what they need and then build the story from there. Or is it a bit of both?
It's a bit of both. The founder story is critical. And I think that the game we like to play is to find that like root cause of why the founder started this company. What was it? What was like the last straw that they were like, we're done. We're doing this now. Need to start this whole company because of X. There's always going to be, I didn't want to work for someone anymore. I've always considered myself an entrepreneur. I love building things and team building, and I love the bringing something to life. There's all of that, but usually there's something tied to the product that when you get to that root, it's really interesting. And then it's basically taking that root and connecting it to the customer in a way that is going to resonate with typically three types of audiences. There's always three. And usually sometimes you find that like the root cause of starting the business is like very pure and easy to market, and you can build a story around that. And other times it's like a feeling or an attitude, and you can take that attitude of like whether it's like rebellion or just like joy, and you can build a very like challenger first brand that is like all about like doing things differently and blah, 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 or something that is more fun and whimsical and bubbly. And you're trying to make the product experience feel very human and approachable. So I think even like an emotion you can pull from a founder. It's funny. We do a lot of work with large brands and with startups. And like any agency, we're always doing 2 to 3 weeks of discovery and research before we start, creative ideating on anything. And I always have to remind our team, these founder stories, these brand stories, they're incredibly valuable. So it's not just about like listening and nodding your head. This is like the primary research we need to dig into to understand everything we need to know about this person or this group of people, because there's a reason why they're here right now. So don't just take this set of questions as like boxes to check. Go deep, and don't be afraid to like ask questions that are slightly uncomfortable. This is a chance to get inside the mind of these people. So I think it's incredibly important.
What was your motivation in starting Wondersauce?
So definitely more on the emotional front, I'd say. Myself and my business partners, we were all working at different agencies in New York in our 20s. So this was about 13, 14 years ago at this point. And we really liked what we did. We were, this was like early days of working with brands and helping them advise on social media. This was when they were really starting to take it seriously. This was when we were bringing a lot of brands into the e-commerce space and building their websites and their apps. So it was a fun time to kind of create things on the internet. So I don't know, it was a hobby, honestly. It was work, but we really enjoyed what we did. And I feel like, I just turned 40. So something I always look back on was this idea that I'm of the generation where we grew up with the internet and the internet grew up with us. Like I remember being like in grade school and seeing a computer that was just like for typing class, and how many words per minute can you type? And then a couple of years later, that same computer had the internet on it. And I was like, whoa, the internet's here. And I remember like begging my parents when I was 12 or 13 for America Online, dial up, internet to get at home. And once we got that, like chat rooms and instant messenger, and then eventually like our middle school, high school nights of like downloading stuff on Napster and LimeWire, and then college, pre-Facebook and post-Facebook, and then everything in our 20s, which was like the mobile app economy and, everything going on now with like Web3 and AI. So I feel like the internet has always existed and grown up as we've grown up. And we wanted to create an agency that our only constant was change and was inspired by the growth of the internet. So that was kind of like why we started the business. And I feel like too, like we were all super opinionated 26-year-old kids that like thought we could do it better. So at some point it's like, if you think you can, just go do it. And we did.
That's excellent. Yeah, I had a digital agency back in Australia around about 15 years ago. So it's changed a lot in that time. How important is influencer marketing in our current context?
It's a pillar of,
Is it?
It's definitely, I would say it's a consideration for every single brand out there right now. Whether you know it or you don't know it. I don't care if it's the local restaurant down the street or the biggest business in the world. I think influencer marketing is an incredibly powerful tool as long as you're doing it right.
Yeah.
I think that it's very easy to use it as a kind of just quick and dirty engagement tool and growth tool, but your audience will eventually sniff that out and it will come off disingenuous and end up falling flat or in some cases doing damage to the brand. But I love the tactic. I love doing it even like at that micro level where it's people that have hundreds or small thousands of followers that might be very relevant in niche industries or in local communities, and using them to get engaged within small pockets of community. So I do believe that, influencer marketing is here to stay, and it is a consideration for every business out there. B2B, B2C, B2B2C, everything.
And are there platforms where you can find influencers and connect with them? Or is it a case of just you find someone interesting and send them a DM and ask, hey, would you be interested in promoting my brand for X amount?
It's more of that. We've had our most success using the direct message route or get in contact with someone's manager. We have used platforms, and there's some great platforms out there that will help you with quantity and getting things done quickly. And they are very effective. It does work. But I'd say that our most successful influencer engagements were done through our own research, finding a list of people we thought would really be great for this business. And then it's like starting down the list of who can we reach out to and who will say yes and who fits within our budget. We're also super aware of trying to find people that don't have tons of active brand relationships going. We want someone that is going to give us most of their energy when it comes to like, their brand energy, because they're obviously doing a lot of other things. But in terms of brand partnerships, like even if it's just a week, give us the week. We want like what makes you special and unique. We want that for this week. So we also look for influencers that are working with less brands.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I like that idea of, in fact, targeting, I suppose it's kind of like the long tail in SEO, but finding those influencers who've got a small following, but it's passionate and enthusiastic, high engagement, reach out, have a conversation as a person and say, look, we think that this might be useful for your audience, and make sure it is. You don't want them promoting something that's completely misaligned.
Definitely. Especially because I think that the line right now is very fine between influencer and celebrity, and influencer and, I'll just start my own business X. That's something we're seeing a lot too, where brands are very aware of that threat of, we have to be careful of how much we align, because of what's stopping this person from jumping into this space.
Yeah, very true. I saw a LinkedIn post, and the link to your LinkedIn will be in the show notes for anyone who's interested. And it was all about simplifying your messaging. It said, I strive to structure my writing, emails, deck creation, and ideas to focus on the simplest output, the purity of the thought, and the simplicity of the idea. I really like that. And I'm interested in your thoughts on actually simplifying. How can we simplify what we're trying to express to the world?
I think it's just say what you mean. So I like to talk to our strategy and creative teams about our accounts. And an exercise I like to do is I'll check in on a piece of business and I'll say, by the way, what's going on with that? What's the idea? Where are we where are we navigating? And people that are with Wondersauce for a while, they'll know how to answer those questions. And they'll basically give me a sentence or two. The idea is X. This is what we're going all in on. This is why. And I'm like, okay, I like it. Interesting. And the second I start hearing like buzzwords and long-winded rationale and explanation for the idea, and you're telling me why it's going to be cool, you lost me. Yeah. If you have to tell me something is cool or innovative or really interesting, it's probably not. So just tell me the thing that's interesting, and I can think about my own thoughts on it and ultimately give you my answer. But I think that right now it's funny, like it is so easy to be convoluted and well written, because every one of our word processors right now are hooked up to like some sort of AI, whether it's Google or ChatGPT or whatever. And you could write something that is incredibly clean and pure, and then all of a sudden, like you're getting all these like squiggles underneath it, and you go to like, accept a change, and you're like, whoa, I didn't mean to say that. No, like stop that. So a lot of times I'll write in like Apple Notes where there's no outside interference, and I'm just writing in there. And a lot of times then I'll look at it and I'll start to eliminate sentences and words I don't need. And I'm just trying to say exactly what I mean. And if there's anything in the way, I'll try and remove it. And I think that's super powerful for whether it's a campaign and writing taglines, social copy, or even writing decks and presentations. And I always say, like, when I'm reviewing a presentation and I'm not necessarily very involved in the account, but someone's asking for my input, all I'm doing is reading the headline of every slide. And if I read 30 slides and the deck is well written and I just read the headline, I know exactly what the presentation is about. If I don't, it's a bad deck. Start over, rewrite every single headline. So I encourage that our strategists, they write in Microsoft Word or a simple word processing software, and they write single spaces, headline, double space, new slide, headline, 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 and those are intended to be the flow of the presentation. And if you can't write like that, and those headlines you can't use to trigger your narrative for each slide, you don't know the subject matter well enough. Go deeper. So I have a bunch of little tricks I use to keep it simple.
Yeah, there is way too much noise in the world. I always find if a blog post or an email starts off with something like, you can feel it, like in today's fast-paced world, guys, please just write the short summary, because I know this is going to be generated by ChatGPT or similar. It's kind of like, just, you don't need that stuff anymore. Give me 2 bullet points and then we can go from there. I find Apple Notes really useful for that as well, because there's no interference. Just load everything in there, and then you can take it out and process it or do other things with it, put it through Grammarly or whatever to simplify. Yeah, it's a good process. What do you enjoy about leading a team?
I enjoy managing people and watching them grow. Honestly, it's like one of the best parts of running a services business. I think as an agency, we're only as good as our people. Our people are our intellectual property. So we need to build a system and a structure that allows really talented, creative, organized, thinking people a chance to succeed. And I really like the idea of watching people kind of grow and accomplish what they're looking to do professionally. And honestly, I like the idea of scale. I like taking the things that I was once good at and critical to be a part of at Wondersauce, and I like making myself duplicative. And I've found that by doing that, not only are you scaling your business, but you're usually increasing the quality of your business because you're finding people that are ultimately better at the tasks that you're doing. And they're able to take what made you unique at that, master it, and then put their own spin on it and what makes them really special. So I love scaling teams, and really what I like to say is training through osmosis. It's a lot of conversations and experiences and reviewing emails and things that in the beginning it could be like, whoa, is this person like micromanaging me? And then you realize over the course of a few weeks, it's like, I'll back off once I have a general understanding of like how best to work with someone.
What are the qualities you look for when hiring? Do you consider values, or is it more competencies?
Well, values are super important. I mean, like, I'm trying to suss out if, obviously integrity. I want someone who is going to ensure that from an ethics standpoint, Wondersauce is doing everything great and feeling good about the person representing the name. And we like nice people. But in terms of the skills I look for in any role, I'd say communication is the most important one for me. And that is like 1A and 1B with your ability to write and ultimately articulate a thought, whether that's a creative idea or a well-constructed piece of communication to a client. I think writing and communication, and then ultimately organization, those are like super, super critical to any role. Typically, if those two things are in place, I've found that like time management and ability to make deadlines are usually there as well, and that skill is there. And I ask very weird questions in interviews that might come off as like obnoxious, but I say to people, so like, are you a good writer? And they'll say, well, yeah, I'm a good writer. I'm like, okay, so like a lot of times, like I'll call you with an idea, and like, does jumping into a blank page scare you, or like, can you like work without a template? And I'll drill into that point 3 different ways. And what I'm looking for is someone that is comfortable developing their own writing and thoughts. And I don't care if it's an email or a deck or a headline. If you can do it, I'm excited. So those are the kind of things I look for in employees usually.
What are some stories of founders or success stories from your time at Wondersauce?
When we started the business, it was myself and my buddy Eric. The first day of Wondersauce, we was working out of his apartment, and we had like 1.5 clients, sort of, and enough money in the bank to last a few months to give this thing a go. We were young; we didn't have much responsibility there, and if it failed, we'd just go back to work. So I look back now, and I'm like, I wish I could go back to that mindset because it was so pure and simple and clean, and I didn't know anything. So like now, if I were to start a new business, I'm like ruined because I know too many things. I'm too like risk aware. So I remember like those early days where it just felt so fun. And I remember like landing our first 6-figure account. I remember landing our first 7-figure account. I remember hiring our first person. And I remember hiring like a few years later, our 100th person. The first 3 or 4 years of Wondersauce was wild. It was truly like every single week someone new showed up, and it just didn't stop. We had no funding. We had no outside investment at all. It was just a really cool story and a cool moment. And from 2011 to like 2016, we went from like 2 people to over 100. And it was wild. We sold the business in 2016 to Project Worldwide. It's a network of different agencies that are super collaborative. We really loved that move because we were not done building and growing yet. But there was an operational burden on the founders where when you get to that size and you're completely independent, a lot of your day-to-day becomes managing your relationship with the bank, collections, and a lot of stuff that just isn't that fun. It was really like, it was $1 million a month to keep the business open. It was wild. So when we sold, we chose Project because I believe like of the agency they own, all but one of the founders still remain with the company. So we were like, they're doing something right. So we wanted to go there and continue to grow. And, since we've been part of the network since 2016, it's been amazing. And the experiences we got to have because of our sister agencies, whether it's doing live events and playing a digital support team to George P. Johnson, who does some of the biggest events in the world, or working with really incredible creative agencies like Motive. It's just been a whole different chapter to Wondersauce. So we've had so many moments, but those are just a few.
Amazing. Yeah, that idea of being absorbed into a larger company terrifies many founders. But if you find the right fit, I suppose you can really leverage their network and their back office and their support and their tools and systems and so forth. So any tips for people out there who are considering starting a business in 2024?
I would say if you're starting a business in 2024 that is in this industry, it is very competitive. And it is not easy. It is easy to start a business, start an agency. You can do it with a simple website and a service. You could say, I want to make Shopify websites, or I want to do branding. You give it a name, file an LLC, launch a website. That'll be the only easy part of doing this. So I like to encourage people that are thinking about it to do it for the right reasons. I think that there's a lot of ways to make money in this world. And if you don't love what you're doing and you don't love the craft of creating things on behalf of brands and understanding what it means to be a services company where you are a vendor. Yes, you can say you're a partner or creative collaborators and all that stuff. You're a vendor. At the end of the day, you're paid money to do a service. You're expected to do that service on time and to a very high quality. This is not a place to just experiment with art projects. So I'd say do it because you love it, not because you think it's going to be very lucrative one day, or you heard someone and someone did it and it's, a very easy way to make six figures. Do it because you love it. Because if you don't, you're going to get exposed and it's never going to work out, or you're going to have some success for a year, but you're going to hate it because you don't like being in service of clients. And that's something that I've always held very true to Wondersauce. People are always like, you guys have launched like 4 dozen businesses on behalf of other brands, and you've worked with some of the biggest companies in the world. Like, why don't you just do your own products? And I'm like, because it's a totally different business model. And the second we do that, it dilutes what we do as a services company. So if I really wanted to start a product, I would do that, and I wouldn't do service. I'd give 100% of my energy to that. So I think whatever you're doing, do it because you love it, not because of the monetary gain or value you see in it.
Because that will follow. If you've got the right skill set and the right passion, it's kind of going to be contagious in a way. I'm interested in your thoughts on a thought leader or a founder becoming a content creator. I mean, many that I meet are very reluctant to put themselves in front of a camera and tell their story, but it seems like that's becoming more and more important.
It is. So I had a conversation actually yesterday with someone about this. They were thinking about, quote, putting themselves out there a little bit more. And it's something that I was very uncomfortable with myself. But, I will say this. When we first started, we used to spend nights and weekends staring at our competition's websites. And we would say, oh, they got that project and they did a really good job. And we would get super jealous. Or they would launch a new website and we would look at it and we'd be like, oh, it's beautiful. They did a really good job here. And we would really maintain an awareness of all of these, what our competition was doing. And we would watch it very closely. That has changed. I can't tell you the last time I've spent more than 30 seconds on one of our competitors' websites. I really don't care, to be completely honest. I really don't care what they have to say. We're up against them in competition
Sometimes I know who they are, sometimes I don't. But I will say right now, I believe that the experience we had 10 years ago where we were sweating our competition's websites, we're now in the age of the founder or the founders are the face of the brand. And people want to know and follow what individuals say. They're less likely to follow what brands and businesses have to say. So I think that if you are a creative agency and you have a unique perspective, you're doing yourself a disservice not talking about your unique perspective. So from my perspective, I'm publishing like 2 to 3 times a week. I've only been doing it now for almost a year. It's slightly uncomfortable, but I'm just trying to put my ideas out in public. It's not for everyone, but I don't really care. When you work with us, our whole way of pitching is on our first call, we're giving ideas to clients over the phone. It's just how we are. We're not a sales organization. We're an ideas organization. So I find it as an interesting way to test ideas in the market and see what people think. And it's funny, like, you get engagement. You see how many people like it. Oh, 50 people like that one. Only 5 people like that. It's not good. Or 100 people like that. But what you don't see is the DMs you get and the emails you get. People saying, I really like what you wrote, or I'm resonating with your content. And those people are not ever commenting or liking your posts. They're lurking and they're reviewing things. So it's really funny because you end up getting these like DMs and these conversations from very prominent, smart people, and they lead to great conversations. So it's a new world. I'm just getting used to it, but I encourage it.
Personal brand is therefore important. And I've actually noticed even consulting firms like PwC, who traditionally would not encourage an employee to have their own brand, they're letting them go. Write a book, create a social media following. A personal brand can really elevate a traditional brand, and they probably get way more traction.
Yeah, 100%.
Interesting times, isn't it? I mean, if someone is keen to build a personal brand, any tips? First and foremost, get a good camera or just use your phone, just speak, plan your sessions. Any tips for someone out there who wants to get into it?
I am not in a position to give advice in this area.
Me too.
I'm just getting used to it. I will say that for me, a routine has been really key.
Yes.
So I'll have random ideas about a post or something that I think is interesting, and I'll just talk into my phone onto my notes, and I'll save an idea. And then when I'm feeling inspired, I'll go back into my notes. I'll have a bunch of half-baked ideas, and I'll just start writing. So I think like when the moment is there, don't take it for granted, because you can't just like put an hour block on your calendar and say, this is when I'm going to like work on my personal brand. Like, I don't think it works like that. We're all busy. Clients will always take priority. Your team will always take priority. So you've got to kind of fit this stuff in when it makes sense and it's conducive to your schedule. But, and I've really enjoyed just doing the podcasts. I think there's so many interesting people out there with cool stories, and it's fun to connect.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a practice, as you said. Make it a discipline. It's like publishing this podcast. In the beginning, I felt so much friction. It was like, oh my God, I've got to publish another one. And there's all of these steps. But just like going to the gym or doing anything else, you just get into a rhythm of it. And then it's kind of like, I got to export clips and reels, and then I've got to do this. But with practice, you stop sweating it, as with anything, and it just becomes part of your life, even though you thought, I don't have space for it. If you just allocate time as you would for your fitness, you'll get there. Hey, John, how can people find out more about Wondersauce and connect with you?
Yeah, wondersauce.com. And you can just hit us up on any of those channels. My email address is john, JOHN, at wondersauce.com. And as mentioned, you can find me on LinkedIn, where you can see a bunch of random thoughts weekly.
And they're really good thoughts. I was on your LinkedIn earlier on. There's some really great observations and insights. Who's your ideal customer?
Really, it's any brand that is spending between $2 and $10 million all in on marketing.
Mhm.
And that's for media, for creative services. And, we step in and we can basically be your agency to handle creative and media and give you a very tight, integrated idea in a way that we feel will stretch your dollars, to the best of their ability. And we want to ultimately manage one key business goal for you versus have you work with 2 to 3 smaller agencies. So we're really built to service that client who is probably juggling a few small vendors. We can step in and kind of be your boutique studio who can kind of run everything.
Excellent. Any final thoughts for those who stuck with us all the way to the end?
Well, if you stuck with us to the end, thank you. And no final thoughts. I mean, just try and have fun. I think that the world is increasingly crazy, and we obviously work a lot. It's expensive to live, so you got to try and have fun, and that's what I'm trying to strike on a weekly basis.
Thank you, John. Great to catch up. And everyone, please do check out the links in the show notes. And we'll see you in the next episode. John, thank you.
Thank you so much.